Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson and Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we're going to have Mike Rowe. He's going to talk about the Clark County School District arbitration fraud. Before we get to our guests, Jim, got anything?
Yeah, actually I do. So, June is Pride Month?
Like pride, like I'm feeling good?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I thought too. Anyway, so yesterday I walked into work and I didn't have a Pride shirt on.
What's a pride shirt?
And, well, I asked for clarification. So I'm not going to go into what the clarification was. But they're like, where's your pride? And first I said, well, it's right here.
In your heart.
Yeah. And then I said, well, I'm seeing a lot of pride shirts, and one of them was that I'm black and proud. I didn't have a problem with that at all. But I was kind of curious, so I asked my boss, I said, can I wear a white and proud t-shirt?
Yeah.
And he said, no. And I was like, that's interesting. So I was like, well, why not? Now, for me, being a strong supporter of the First Amendment, I was actually appalled by that. So then I started discussing it with HR, because thanks to you, Steve, like, closed mouths don't get fed. So I went to HR for further clarification.
Right.
And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. So veterans that are the reason why we have a First Amendment get 2 days. Okay. Get Memorial Day to celebrate those that we have lost in combat, right? And then Veterans Day celebrates all who have served.
Yeah, well, there's also Independence Day, too.
Right. So I was like, it's interesting that veterans only get those 2 days. But Pride gets a month? But I can't say I'm proud to be who I am. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And so, long story short, we went on and on and on. They were talking about diversity. And I said, no, I'm all for diversity. Do not get me wrong. I am. But, like, you need to clarify it.
Yeah.
So, I was basically told that I couldn't wear a shirt showing pride for who I am, but others can.
And you need but you can show pride for others, but you can't show pride for oneself.
Right.
Makes sense, huh?
Yeah. So I thought, okay, I understand to a point where we're trying to get into the diversity aspect.
Yeah.
But where I get frustrated was, you know what, I don't care. Like, if they don't want me to wear a shirt that says white and proud, that's fine. I'm just confused, though, why this group gets an entire month, but veterans
Gets the 2 days.
get 2 days.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up Independence Day, July 4th.
Which is coming up.
Because I know several veterans, I'm not going to name names, that the reason why we are an independent country is because of them. What's the number one thing most people do on Independence Day?
Light, stupid fireworks.
Right. How many veterans are suffering from PTSD and hide in their houses?
I'm tired of the music.
Yeah, because they're terrified of fireworks because it reminds them of combat. So I think this country needs to take a very hard look at the First Amendment. The First Amendment works both ways.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm just going to leave it at that because I could go on for an entire
Very
hour.
well said.
Yeah.
Very well said, Jim Jones. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I don't want to take away from Mike because he's got a lot of important stuff.
Well, I don't have any. I don't have anything. I thought I said my piece last week, so I'm good. Let's talk to Mike Rowe so we can find out about the CCSD arbitration fraud. Mr. Rowe, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Could you give us a background of yourself?
So I was a certified school teacher. I taught in Cleveland Municipal School District for about 3 years.
Okay.
I then came here to Clark County, Nevada to be a teacher. I taught middle school science.
Okay.
So I graduated from Cleveland State University.
Okay.
While teaching here for the Clark County School District, I obtained a master's degree in educational leadership.
So you're smarty pants then?
You know, I'm just an awkward kind of guy. I'm actually learning disabled. I have dyslexia.
Okay.
But in terms of my factual intellect,
Right.
it's pretty high.
Okay.
I shouldn't say it like that, but it is what it is.
That's how you feel?
I
Say
don't.
it?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm, narcissist or anything like that.
Right. Please continue. That's only in family court. The narcissist comes out on a lot of people, either as a litigant or as a judge.
And I play a real a-hole on Facebook.
Who doesn't?
So anyways.
But let me interrupt you real quick,
ahead,
though,
sir.
if you don't mind. But you post some stuff on Facebook that I don't necessarily agree with all the time, because we are friends on Facebook. But here's the difference between you and a lot of people on Facebook. You're on the show.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
So you're not, Steve knows this is my term, keyboard gangster. Like, you're willing to show up and answer questions in person, not just hide behind a keyboard like a coward that most of these people on Facebook are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you know
Sorry.
what? We all have our political differences.
Yeah.
Right.
I respect that. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we all should respect the Constitution.
I call them keyboard gangsters.
Yeah.
Keyboard gangster, yeah.
I can be a keyboard gangster. It just depends on who I'm.
Some call them warriors. There's a warrior about them.
Right.
Shed some blood.
Agitate people. I can agitate people on Facebook pretty well. So anyways, I was working in the Clark County School District. I was importing over-the-counter, non-FDA approved ED medication,
ED.
erectile dysfunction.
Oh, okay.
And what I realized is that if you wanted to buy ED medication, one pill was like $25.
Wow.
And you had to have a prescription, and it's not covered under health care.
Why
So,
would that pill cost so much?
I mean, if you got an ED problem, I suppose you'd be willing to pay $25 for that pill.
I heard people use cocaine for that. That's not true?
I have no idea. I've never used cocaine. So I figured out that there is a little bit of a market for this product, and it's very inexpensive. There's a big difference between the pharmaceutical and medical industry here than there is foreign countries. Mm-hmm. If you ever travel abroad, you figure out pretty quickly that you're kind of getting ripped off here in America. Mm-hmm. So I was importing it. I was passing through customs with it, no problem, ordering it online with no problem. Mm-hmm. I did research on it, and my understanding was it isn't illegal because it's non-FDA approved. It's pretty complex because Pfizer Pharmaceutical has the patent on sildenafil, which is the active ingredient. Sildenafil is also called brand name Viagra. Yeah. However, they didn't have the patent for this in India. Mm-hmm. So the country of India was manufacturing this product called Comagra Oral Jelly. Mm-hmm. And it does have sildenafil in it, but it also has other substances, which means you don't really know what it is. It's not FDA approved.
Right.
It's very inexpensive. So when I was importing it, I was reselling it. Mm-hmm. There's a variety of reasons why men might take ED medication. prostate cancer, maybe you have a prostate infection. Some people just take it recreationally, like you say, like your cocaine. And I was selling it, and I was marking it up by I was selling it for like $5 a pack. And I didn't think there was anything wrong.
How many's in a pack?
Well, you can buy individually at the time. I mean, you could buy 10, but one pack is probably like 100 milligrams.
Okay.
So it's a very large amount. And that would be equivalent to maybe 4 Viagra pills.
Okay.
So you can imagine, the money people are saving. And in my mind, I was thinking, this isn't illegal. I'm just going to make, a couple extra bucks.
Right.
So I started selling it.
How were you selling this?
I put an ad online.
Okay. So it's not like you were like hiding or you didn't think you were doing
I didn't think I was doing anything illegal.
Yeah, okay.
And to be totally honest with you, I was selling it to cops, selling it to lawyers.
Okay.
I mean, like I say, men might want to take it recreationally, or they really need it to have a medical condition.
Right.
So I put the ad on online, and I was arrested for it.
Oh, wow.
And I had never been arrested in my whole entire life.
How did they show up at your house?
No, the cops responded to my ad, and they did like a so-called sting setup, where they were going to take down this big drug dealer.
Okay.
So I went down. I had been selling it, and people at the casinos would come into town and buy it.
Yeah.
I wasn't selling like a massive amount.
Right.
I was just making, maybe a few $1,000s.
Okay.
But definitely the money helped. And in my mind, I thought I was helping other people.
Right.
Because I was saving them a lot of money. Unfortunately, though, the healthcare industry here has that locked down. I wasn't guilty of anything at a state level. So I was charged with distributing a dangerous drug without a prescription. And when people hear the word drug has a variety of different meanings.
And how's it dangerous?
I don't think it's dangerous at all. It could be dangerous if you have a heart condition and you have a blood pressure issue. I mean, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
So distributing a dangerous drug without a prescription, I was arrested and charged with the felony. In Nevada, they have their get tough on crime policy is.
Okay.
Anybody that sells any type of drug is charged with the felony. So here's the legal issue. If you ever look at a police report, there's these little red stamps on there that say you cannot disseminate the police reports, and that statute is NRS 179. And you can go through there and read all these statutes related to that, or all these clauses. It'll define the agencies, define who can have the police report, etc. At the time, there was a big, huge investigation going on because of, I wouldn't call it an investigation, more like a cover-up. During the Angela Peterson case. So the officer that arrested me immediately contacted, I believe he probably contacted Christopher Klemp of the Clark County School District Police. He was the internal affairs investigator, because I had told the officer that arrested me that I was giving this to cops. And he's like, who's the cop? Who's the big dog? I'm going to take him down. So to go back to the word drug has a variety of meanings. There's narcotic drugs, which are scheduled drugs.
Right. Yeah.
There's prescription drugs, which has a legend on file, which means only a doctor can prescribe it. Right. There's over-the-counter drugs, like aspirin. So Comagra oral jelly, what is it?
And what about recreational drugs?
Well, recreational drugs would fall probably into your narcotics.
Okay.
But Comagra oral jelly, essentially under state law, is nothing because you can't get a prescription for it. You can't walk into a doctor's office right now and say, hey, I want a prescription for Comagra oral jelly. It doesn't exist in America. So it's a non-FDA approved, over-the-counter. I probably could have been charged with something federally, maybe like a patent violation or something to that effect. But under state law, I was innocent.
Right.
So the officer that arrested me immediately disseminated the police report to Clark County School District, which is totally illegal. It's actually defined as a misdemeanor. Not only that, but it's a violation of my Fourth Amendment constitutional rights.
And aren't you innocent until proven guilty?
Exactly. So this is what it boils down
the
to.
14th Amendment then.
So they were after this big dog cop that I was selling this to, I won't reference his name, but he was actually a Clark County School District police officer. And it's very unique because he and I are kind of bound by the same legal circumstances. So whatever happened to me from a civil standpoint also happened to him because we were both found guilty. And the reason this occurred is because it comes back to this assembly bill that they passed in 2011, Assembly Bill 255. And what that assembly bill did...
In this past session?
No, it was, I'm sorry, 2011.
Okay.
So in 2011, Governor Sandoval, the educational governor, he eliminated...
I thought Kenny Gwynn was the educational governor.
Well, I don't know. He gave the Clark County School District like $100 million. And what he did is he eliminated teacher tenure. So there was a bunch of people grandfathered in that had tenure.
Okay.
And what tenure means in the Clark County School District is you're entitled to what they call a laudanum hearing, because there's a famous court case. And these hearings are evidentiary hearings. In my case, it's very unique because I was arrested off campus in my own personal life. Clark County School District regulations define an arrest as being issued a citation. You're innocent until proven guilty, but right away everybody jumped on the bandwagon and they found me guilty. So they just concluded that I was going to go to criminal court and be charged with something. And one of the reasons is because they just didn't know what the hell this stuff is.
Right.
I mean, how do you know? The police never seen this stuff. They don't know it's a foreign substance. So I was terminated from my job without a hearing. And the reason I was terminated from my job without a hearing, under NRS 391, there's a state agency that's supposed to conduct these hearings, and it's called the State Board of Education.
Don't you have a union rep you go through
So
being a teacher?
Here's what happened is when they passed this law, basically what they did is they made the union kind of like a slave entity. It has no power. Because it has no power, and it gets more complex because the union subcontracts all their legal work to all these different law firms. Not really. I mean, the educational support staff has more law firms than the Clark County School District. Clark County School District subcontracted with the Dyer and Lawrence Law Office. So right away, they signed me up for legal services. So the Clark County School District is accusing me of, I'm arrested off campus, but under state law, you're guaranteed due process. So under NRS 391, it says a teacher who is officially charged with the felony, you can go to a hearing, you can agree to take your pay or not agree to take your pay. I was officially never charged with anything. All they had was a police report. I wasn't formally charged with any crime at all. And I was fired from my job, and so was the other person.
Did you go before any of the school board trustees?
No, this was all handled by Edward Goldman, who was in charge of the employee management relations. And he was handling this whole thing because what they did is when they passed this assembly bill.
What year are we talking that this arrest took place?
This was 2014.
Okay.
So what happened, it took me a long time to figure all this out. I don't have a law degree, so I want people to know that. I don't have a formal education in law. I am a researcher. I can read stuff and kind of figure things out as I go along. Obviously, when you're interacting with the real lawyer, they have a far superior knowledge base than me, so I have to catch up.
So let me ask you one thing real quick, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is something that's always really frustrated me. So here's where I get confused is, like, you said you don't have a law degree, right?
Correct.
Okay. But you can do your research, and you can pull up all the NRS statutes and read them and decipher pretty much what it means, right? But then you have to go to an attorney because the attorney supposedly understands this stuff more than you. Mm-hmm. So why are these NRS statutes written to where a layman can't understand it? So then they have to go to an attorney, and who really knows if that attorney is actually looking out for your best interest, or if they're just a part of the same corrupt system?
Well, in my case, all these attorneys that are interacted with are part of the same corrupt system, and I can prove it by law. It's not a question of fact.
Right.
It's a question of I can prove it by law. So this all had happened to me. I hired a criminal defense attorney who I happen to admire very much.
Who's that?
Michael Periente.
Okay.
Not only is he an awesome criminal defense attorney, he's a marvelous human being. He was the only guy who treated me kindly during this whole ordeal. So you have to understand that now that my constitutional rights have been violated, I've been found guilty before my criminal arraignment in district court. I have civil remedies to sue people. I was never officially charged with any crime. I went to my arraignment in criminal court. It was dropped to a misdemeanor and dismissed. Totally dismissed.
Try to get your job back.
Well, that's where it comes into play. So what they did is when they eliminated teacher tenure, they replaced it with the collective bargaining agreement. And what they did is they put an arbitration clause in the correct collective bargaining agreement, which in my case, it's very unique. It's my arbitration award is 1 in a billion. Because there's a statute, NRS 391760, it basically reads that any teacher who's charged with a felony and has the case dismissed is entitled to back pay, interest, and nominal seniority. And it's a declaratory statute. I mean, you can just declare it and have a judge say, oh, well, that's what it says. It's public policy. But you have to understand this. Had I gone to the State Board of Education, there's administrative remedies. So that State Board of Education would be the administrative remedy for everybody in the state of Nevada, all public employees. It's no longer there because Assembly Bill 255 took it away. So what the lawyers and what the legislators and the politicians did when they passed that piece of legislation, they allowed the lawyers to do all of these arbitrations in-house, these dismissal arbitrations. What makes my case 1 in a billion is because the collective bargaining agreement doesn't have jurisdiction over the statute that's at the State Board of Education. So you have to think about these subcontracted lawyers, right? Now that they have this counterfeit system of due process in place. Essentially what they're doing is they're running the State Board of Education. So I like to say they privatized it to themselves. And you have to think of what that means for the lawyers. What that means for the lawyers is if you control this governmental entity, the State Board of Education, the fees for the arbitrations are like 10 grand. And they're binding. And the reason they're binding is because you can only appeal under certain circumstances. It's more difficult to appeal a State Board of Education arbitration award than it is to appeal one of these goofy collective bargaining agreement arbitrations award. So that statute said, in the collective bargaining agreement says that the Clark County School District and the CCEA or whoever the support staff education is will use the American Arbitration Association to conduct these arbitrations. But what Dr. Goldman did and what the lawyers did is they created their own panel of arbitrators. So they just stacked it with people who don't even have law degrees. And it got to a point, if you ever read Doc Harris's complaint to the school board, his complaint is dead on what was going on in Clark County School District Legal Department. He talks about their having these arbitrations, how much money it's costing the school district. So when I got funded for my real arbitration, it was like 10 grand, that money just disappeared. It went right into a lawyer's pocket, Dyer and Lawrence Law Office. And then they told me I had to pay for it myself. One of the reasons they're doing this, though, is they're trying to exhaust your money. So you can't fight it. So they know.
I know how that works.
So they know I can sue them under.
They financially rape you with legal fees, so you can't continue the fight.
You can't fight anymore, and they have insurance, and obviously, the Clark County School District has insurance. They have all the money in the world. Here I am, just a small little guy hiring these lawyers who are all subcontracted by the Clark County School District. And literally, I have a clause of action under United States Code 42, 1983, for not only illegal search and seizure, but innocent until proven guilty. And not only that, but I'm entitled to declaratory relief because the statute's very clear. If it's dismissed, you get everything back. Now, under my circumstances, it's very unique because I could sue people in their individual capacity. So there was a gaggle of people that screwed me over.
And they don't have immunity, huh?
Well, no, they wouldn't have immunity in this point because it's very clear the statute says under NRS 391 that I'm supposed to have a hearing and I get to decide what's supposed. So they wouldn't have, qualified immunity under that nonsense. So all of these people would be liable to me for back pay, interest, and seniority, and that's a lot of money. So they all knew this, and I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about any of these statutes or any of this constitutional stuff. I'm just here, a little small guy. And not only was I, but so was the Clark County School District police officer. So this created a disaster, a legal disaster for entire Clark County. And what they did is they conspired to defraud me or fix my arbitration. And when they did that, I had uncovered that they had been doing this to hundreds of people. So the lawyers control this fake, I'll call it a kangaroo court.
But they always say where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Oh, there's a big fire in this one for sure.
So I got a quick question for you. So someone who's signed contracts before, so you taught in the Clark County School District, correct? Okay.
How many years were you there, buddy?
10 years.
So a part of your teaching contract, did you have to sign anything stating that you were bound to go through arbitration first?
Well, it wasn't done by me. It was done by the lawyers who are subcontracted by the CCEA.
Okay.
So you have to understand the lawyers put this arbitration clause in. My case is very unique because if you read the CBA, there's two arbitrations. The state option still existed for me.
Oh, I think Jim is talking, correct me if I'm wrong, that at the beginning when you first become a teacher, don't you have these contracts you sign and saying if there's any litigation, you have to go through arbitration first?
Well, there's a federal law, it's called administrative remedies.
Right.
You have to fulfill these administrative remedies before you can pursue an action in real court.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's just a law. This administrative remedy was still available to me under state law, but I was being blocked from going to it.
Oh, okay.
So what they had conspired to do is grieve and arbitrate my personal life under the collective bargaining agreement, which can't be done. They did it, but it's a fraud, and that's how I was able to prove it was a fraud.
But how did you prove it, though?
It's jurisdiction.
Okay, but in what courtroom did you prove that, though?
Well, I proved it in federal court. I'll get there.
Okay.
So I have all these civil remedies available to me, and Clark County is conspiring to take all these civil remedies away from me. So I hire a lawyer. I'm trying to, figure out what to do to get my job back with back pay, interest, and seniority. And I hire Adam Levine. And Adam Levine is subcontracted by the Clark County School District Police Association to handle all of their arbitrations. And he picks out this phony arbitrator. The guy's name's Martin Henner, who doesn't even have a law degree. And he's on this phony panel of arbitrators. Meanwhile, I had received a grievance in the mail to go to the State Board of Education, but I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know any of this stuff.
Right.
You know, I'm just trusting these guys. You walk into a lawyer's office, someone like Adam Levine, he has all these credentials. He's been practicing law for a number of years, won big lawsuits. He represents the Clark County School District Police Union and all of their arbitrations. And you just conclude that this guy is going to fix your problem, fix your legal problem. But he should have never taken my case, because you have to remember there was already a police officer involved.
He was conflicted out.
He was, not only was he conflicted, but he was setting me up, because the Clark County School District Police is liable civilly to me and the other guy. So he was setting me up. And so what they did is they scheduled my arbitration under this collective bargaining agreement where they have this phony panel of arbitrators. I then figured out that Adam Levine, I got to tell you, if you trust your instincts. I mean, as humans, we have the ability, we have an innate sense about us. If you're interacting with a lawyer and you think this lawyer is defrauding you in some capacity, or you think there's something wrong, trust your instincts. Because I've interacted with a lot of people going through the family court system who have been the victims of fraud. And they have that feeling and they just don't act on it. You know what I mean? Because fraud is very difficult. It's very difficult, especially when you're interacting with folks who are very educated. They can take advantage of you because you're just not educated. I mean, I wasn't educated, but I learned all this stuff through just reading. So I thought that there was something up with him. And I didn't know about all of these civil remedies and all this other stuff that I had. I didn't know about the State Board of Education. I was very naive. So he registers me for this arbitration, and I fired him because I was like, this guy, I was like, I'm going to let him schedule the arbitration, and I'm going to fire him and hire someone else because I had figured that I couldn't lose. Couldn't lose this arbitration. I mean, it's slam dunk. The law's very clear. So I hire Robert Spretnick. Okay. And he turns out, he's an employment lawyer, but he's also subcontracted by the CCSD. He was doing all of their special ed stuff, which I wasn't aware of. And the main guy behind all of this nonsense was John Okazaki, because he would be representing the Clark County School District Police versus Adam Levine in the union. So they would be doing all these arbitrations. And then in my situation, it would be the Dyer and Lawrence Law Office versus John Okazaki and Scott Greenberg. So they schedule this arbitration. They have this goofy arbitrator. I pay him all this money. I pay Adam Levine money.
How much you paid these attorneys?
Adam Levine, I got off pretty minimally. I gave him a $10,000 deposit, and he ended up charging me like $900 before I fired him. But Robert,
did he give you your money back?
Of course not. And
so he walked away with $9,100?
No, it was $900. It was about $900.
And you gave him a $10,000 deposit.
I gave him I got the money back. Yeah, I didn't get the $900 back.
Oh, okay.
So I took that money. I gave it to Robert.
Like, damn.
Yeah.
We're in the wrong line of business, Steve.
Yeah, you are in the wrong line of business because these lawyers, man. So I go over and I hire Robert Spretnick, and he's going to represent me in this phony arbitration with John Okazaki. And I have this phony arbitration and I lose. Yeah. So the remedy is when you lose, you can file appeals. And that's where you end up in state court. So after I lost, I knew Robert Spretnick was a total fraudster. I had been subjected to so much fraud and torment. I at this time in my life, I probably weighed about 190 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And I used to shake.
And how tall are you?
I'm 6'3". So I used to shake. I would get so nervous from going home. The fraud is very vicious. And when you're being subjected to this stuff, your whole career is on the line, everything you've worked for your whole life. And
didn't you also run for school board?
Yeah, I did run for school board. I knew I had.
It's okay, right?
Yeah, I knew I was going to have no chance at winning, but I appreciate the fact, you know, that those 5,000 some people that voted for me, they made the right choice. Because had I got on that school board, there wouldn't have been one thing that got past me. And I mean, there would be no corruption because I would throw everybody under the bus. Now that I've done this, I don't even care. I don't even think about it.
Right.
Who cares? I'll just throw you under the bus. So, because I've been the victim of so much corruption, I don't care.
Feel people's pain.
I have empathy for all of these people and all of the suffering because, like I say, fraud is very vicious. So, I go through this phony arbitration. Now it's time to appeal it. I hire Alexis Brown. Alexis Brown is kind of like some no-name lawyer. She was working for another gentleman way out in Summerlin. They gave her a job at the Clark County Law Foundation. So she files this federal lawsuit overturning. She's overturning an administrative agency's decision in district court. Remember, this isn't an administrative agency.
Right.
It's just a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
A collective bargaining agreement is not an administrative agency. And the real administrative agency has jurisdiction over the statute, but it's gone because Assembly Bill just took it all away. So, she filed a lawsuit in district court, and it had the civil rights, and she was suing the Clark County Education Association. She was suing Metro Police. She should have sued Clark County School District Police, but they weren't in there. And she was suing the CCSD to get my job back. And then there were all of these other clauses of action in there for civil rights violations. And what she was doing was basically rigging the lawsuit. Because remember, this piece of paper is a fraud. So they removed this action from state court and the federal court. And I get to federal court, and I realized everything was a fraud. Everything that I had just told you guys was just total fraud. And I figured it out by law. And it took me 2 years to figure all this out. So my real administrative remedy for the Clark County School District was at the State Board of Education. They were blocking me from going. Because they were blocking me from going, what they did is they exposed this huge federal racketeering scheme. So the way this federal racketeering scheme works is, let's say you're the subcontracted lawyers for the CCSD, Steve's the subcontracted lawyers for the union. You have this fake court system. Now you hire all these administrators who 30% of them are totally incompetent, and they got promoted because they're man friends with so-and-so. And they're running around and torturing all the teachers by fraud. I mean, and the CCSD is promoting this because it stimulates legal work. So this...
Keep them in business.
It keeps them in business. And taking away...
Kind of like family court.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's exactly like family court.
Just keep you going.
So here's what it's all about. It's all about protracted litigation. So if you're a lawyer and you're being subcontracted by the union, how much money does the union have? If you're a lawyer and you're subcontracted by the CCSD, how much money does the taxpayer have?
Unlimited.
Right. So what you do is you pick Joe Blow teachers like myself. You pick your office secretary. You go in there and say, hey, office secretary, I told you not to use that coffee cup yesterday. You have that coffee cup. You're fired. And she gets dropped into this fake court, this kangaroo court, where everybody loses.
Court of discretion.
And then,
Family court again.
Yeah, and then everybody files appeals.
Right. So I really want to hear your opinion on this, because that would be a whole nother rant on my but I'm agreeing 100% with what you're saying, but I don't want to take away from your time. There's going to be a lot of teachers and stuff that watch this. And of course, we know how propaganda works, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the teachers. I'm praying that most teachers sympathize with what you're going through. However, obviously, they can't say it for obvious reasons, right? But there's going to be certain people that say, well, if you do what you're supposed to do, don't get yourself in trouble like you did, then all this goes away. You wouldn't have had to deal with any of it.
Well, let me ask you this question. What trouble am I in?
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. There's going to be a lot of people that have said that.
What trouble am I in from a legal standpoint?
Well, you lost your job, correct?
Right. But this was all manufactured. I was being set up for lawsuits.
Okay. Well, but then they're going to say the reason why you lost your job is because you did something wrong.
Well, what did I do wrong?
And now you're trying to justify it.
Well, I'm trying to ask you, what did I do wrong from a legal standpoint?
Well, how did you get fired?
I got fired for being arrested.
Okay. So then don't get arrested. You wouldn't have lost your job and all this goes away.
But being arrested is not doing something wrong.
Well, no, I understand. I'm not saying that
If you
you're
understood,
wrong.
you wouldn't be presenting that argument. Anybody could be arrested. Let's say, for example...
Right, but I'm just saying that there are people that
That's fine.
It's not me saying
Right,
it.
no,
I'm
I
playing
hear it all the-
devil's advocate.
You don't
here.
have to play devil's advocate because I hear it all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your answer to them? Instead of coming at me, answer the question to the microphone.
Well, when you go to criminal court and your case is dismissed, there is no double jeopardy.
Right, correct.
You're dismissed. Now, had I had the remedies available to me under state law, I would have been sent home with pay until I went to court because it's due process.
So what's your remedy to it now?
My
I mean,
remedy?
what would you like the system to do differently in order to where somebody doesn't have to go through all the garbage you've been going through?
Well, the system has to be changed, which it is changed because there's a very famous court case that Richard Boulware, who I happen to admire very much because he stood up for all of us public employees and he respects the Constitution. He ruled in Left versus the CCSD.
Talking about the federal judge.
Yeah, the federal judge.
That used to be general counsel for the ACLU.
Correct.
Okay.
He ruled in a famous court case, well, it's going to be famous. It's not so famous right now. Left versus the CCSD, that Assembly Bill 255 isn't unconstitutional on its face, but it provides no mechanism for teachers to have a pre or post termination hearing at the State Board of Education. So basically what it boils down to is follow the Constitution. If I got arrested, let's say, for example, I got arrested for, jaywalking.
Right.
Should I be fired from my job? Should I have to go through all this fraudulent bullcrap?
No.
Right. If the jaywalking is dismissed and I'm innocent and the law says I'm entitled to everything back, then I should get it back. But you have to understand this, under the collective bargaining agreement, the personal life of a teacher is not a concern of the school district unless it's illegal.
I'm glad you said that because we're trying to sue a judge in federal court for fraud and perjury off the bench, but yet the Attorney General is trying to defend him.
Right, I know, yeah, right, exactly.
Isn't that some crap?
Right.
So us taxpayers is paying for his legal counsel when us taxpayers want to remove him off the bench.
And don't get me wrong, in my situation, the cop had every reason to arrest me. I mean, he had probable cause to arrest me. He didn't know what the stuff was. He did not have, under law, the legal authority to disseminate the police report to my employer. And that's a crime, it's a misdemeanor. And Clark County School District had every reason to send me home. I got no problem with that. I mean, I'm a teacher. Obviously, parents aren't going to know, oh, he's dealing drugs. You know?
Right.
I don't want him around my kids. I don't blame him. I would feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know, if I was a parent and I had, my son or daughter and he was arrested for a felony.
We saw Breaking Bad.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm not breaking
Yeah,
bad.
so I mean, basically what I'm trying to get down to is like, because obviously I'm not a fan of the Clark County School District. I'm a strong supporter of teachers, but one of the things that is, so when we start talking about collective bargaining agreements, those are always pretty vague to me because if you're under a collective bargaining agreement, then federal labor law does not apply to you. So
That's not true. Federal laws will always supersede any law. In this
not labor law.
in this situation, what they did is they took Assembly Bill 255,
Right.
and they basically just took a pen and just drew a red line through the whole due process. So in education, what tenure means is it means you're entitled to this evidentiary hearing.
Right.
These evidentiary hearings, you get to
So
present
were you
evidence.
tenured at the time?
Yeah, I was tenured.
Okay.
Because I was hired, way back when, before Assembly Bill 255. So you had all these people that were grandfathered in.
Yeah.
But what the lawyers figured out they can do is what makes my case 1 in a billion is, like I say, the State Board of Education has jurisdiction over the statute. You can't grieve and arbitrate my personal life under the collective bargaining agreement. I'm entitled to have a personal life,
Sure.
There are torts for invasion of privacy, which I could sue them for, which I could have sued them for. However, because I ended up with all these crooked lawyers, and my lawyer took a kickback to get a job at the Clark County Law Foundation to screw me over,
Yeah.
I ended up where I was at. But
Who's that lawyer?
Alexis Brown,
Okay.
and she can't sue me either.
Well, that's another thing that all these, it's not just the Clark County School District. Microsoft did this stuff for years, burying people in legal paperwork to drum out their competition. So they, even though you're right legally, they realize that they have more money and more attorneys than you do, so they're going to bleed you dry and you'll finally just give up.
Well, the thing with my case is there was never nothing to arbitrate. And I was looking at getting my job back with back pay and interest even in federal court. That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
So what my lawyer could have done, is which I figured out later, is she could have filed a motion based on summary judgment
Yeah.
and just say the CBA doesn't have jurisdiction over my set of legal circumstances, and I would have got my job back pay, interest, and seniority. I didn't know this at the time, but I figured it out. So what they were also doing is, because they were rigging these arbitrations, is they were rigging the court cases. Someone's got to pay that money.
Right.
And typically it's Clark County School District insurance. So what I think was going on is, when they were dismissing all of these teachers or support staff or whoever it was in the system, they were still kind of employed with the district, but they weren't getting paid. You have to ask yourself, where'd that money go? And in my mind, I'm thinking someone was probably stealing it. So they had a $60 million budget deficit. When that budget deficit occurred,
Yeah.
the Clark County School District's legal budget was $20 million. They were $40 million over. And it's because Edward Goldman and Scott Greenberg and John Okazaki were running this fraud racket out of the CBA. So what really makes this unique is I worked in the Clark County School District, so I know how it is.
Right.
When you don't have any due process rights, you're literally walking around in eggshells all day, every day. And you're subjected to bullying, you're subjected to extortion, harassment, and fraud. Because what some of these principals are doing, not all of them. I mean, I worked for some really good principals. And I worked for a guy for 8 years. He was wonderful. He wouldn't do the stuff that they were doing. But you get some of these principals who, they're on an ego trip, or they just got promoted because they know Joe Blow or whatever. And they're literally running around and they're torturing these teachers. We've had teachers commit suicide over this. I was close. I mean, I was close myself, because the fraud and you can't beat it. Because there is no Laudamere hearing, and because the rules of evidence do not apply, a principal could just walk in and say, hey, I told you yesterday that you had to have a lesson plan on plate tectonics, and today you have one on whatever. I'm writing you up. And then they have these investigatory meetings where they show up, and the CCA rep stands there and just basically tells the teacher you better be honest or you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
And it's just all being set up for these lawsuits. But it's very unique in my situation because when I got to federal court, I figured out all this stuff was going on from a legal standpoint. And what I did is I just pretended like I didn't know. And I knew my lawyer was a fraudster. I knew this arbitration was a fraud. I knew my administrative remedy was here over at the State Board of Education. And remember, had I fulfilled that administrative remedy, I would be able to sue under all these other statutes. So they were blocking me from going. And they were trying to minimize the amount of damages. There was a gentleman, I think in San Diego, I read one case where he was fired from his insurance agent job because he was arrested and they gave the police report to his employer. And he got like a $15 million settlement.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, not only is this a violation of my civil rights, but it's a crime. You can read the statute, NRS 179. They're not allowed to disseminate these police reports. And this should be police officer 101. You know,
Are you going to file a civil suit based on that?
I already filed a suit. So what I did is after I figured out that all this was going on, I took my lawyer's lawsuit that was filed on my behalf. I figured out all of these laws and I drafted this lawsuit. And it's basically a civil RICO lawsuit. I was in Mr. Mahan's court. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Mahan or Manham? I always get it wrong.
Is that federal?
Yeah, federal.
Oh, not that familiar with the federal court as I am with the state court.
Oh, I figured. Well, I think it's Mayhem. So I was in his court.
And that name sounds familiar.
And I was with federal magistrate Peggy Lean.
Okay.
And when I got to court, these lawyers were rigging this lawsuit. And they made 2 fraudulent rulings against me. And one of them I have right here with her name signed on it. So when I went through this lawsuit, in the meantime, I had figured out where my administrative remedy was, and I was trying to get in there to get the real hearing. Mr. Mayhem dismissed the case, and he made stricken this lawsuit.
Under what grounds?
I'm concluding it's going to be a federal false claims lawsuit.
But what grounds did the federal judge dismiss your case?
It had to be dismissed. I never fulfilled the administrative remedy.
Gotcha.
My case was never ripe. And you have all the fraud involved. So that's what makes my case 1 in a million is I'm in federal court under this phony arbitration award. The rule says that you have to fulfill this administrative remedy before you can take a higher legal action. And that's how I proved it was a fraud. Because the State Board of Education has jurisdiction, you can't grieve and arbitrate my personal life under a collective bargaining agreement. I did nothing wrong. I'm innocent.
I want to make sure you get through all your paperwork before we start wrapping up.
Well, how much time do we got? I mean, I can go on forever.
I know. We got about another 5 minutes.
All right, well, so what I did is I amended the complaint. I sued under RICO.
Okay.
I sued under breach of contract. I put in all of those clauses under the constitutional clauses, and I sued everybody. I left out Metro, which I shouldn't have, because the Marquise Coughlin law firm was involved. The lawyer's name was Brianna Smith.
Well, you got to do stuff like what they do in family court. They throw all kinds of shit against the wall and see what sticks.
Well, this lawsuit was filed in June 19th of 2017. The statute of limitations on civil RICO, it should be June 19th, 2021. This lawsuit, I'm assuming, is going to convert to a federal false claims lawsuit because you have to understand all this money that was supposed to be going to the state agency was getting routed to the collective bargaining agreement. And that was so the lawyers could just steal all the money. Yeah. And then when they disaffiliated and all this stuff went on and the $60 million was missing, I was sitting at home kind of laughing. Not that had happened, but I'm laughing because I had figured out the mechanism of why all of this occurred.
Well, Mr. Rowe, we appreciate you coming on the program. We need you to look into the camera and final remarks, and if you want to provide a point of contact, you could do so as well.
I'd just like to thank everybody. Thank you, Mr. Stanson, for having me. Thank you, Jim Jonas, for having me here on your show. I appreciate your time. Again, I'll make a disclaimer. I'm no lawyer. I mean, I had to learn all this stuff on my own. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can look me up on Facebook. I post a lot. I have this entire lawsuit on there. You're more than welcome to read it. I posted some other legal articles on there as well. But it's all about the United States Constitution at the end of the day. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, we should all bind together and just follow the United States Constitution. If we do that, we'll have a just society. Because really what people are looking for when you're the victim of this type of fraud, this type of extortion, what they really want is justice. That's what it's all about. Sometimes you can't put a price on justice. Having a fair court system, be able to participate in a fair legal process, to hire a lawyer and have that lawyer actually represent you. How do you put a price on that stuff? You lose that stuff, and what you end up having is anarchy, in my opinion. Yeah. But thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rowe. Appreciate you coming on the program. Jim, do you have any?
Just one quick last thing. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And here's the thing that frustrates me the most. Sorry that you're having to go through all this stuff, but at the end of the day, this is why a lot of good people are not, in my opinion, trying to be teachers.
Well, that's all part of the scheme. The scheme is to keep turning people over.
Yeah.
There's no money in having someone there for
the kids, I just
25 years.
I just wanted to sum it up real quick, that the kids are the ones that are actually losing out.
The kids are losing. I'm going to tell you why. Because every time they fire certified teachers and they bring in a sub, that sub is nowhere near as qualified. I mean, it saves them money. But at the end of the day, the reason teachers are leaving is because you don't want to sit there and have some schmuck tell you that they told you to drink out of a red coffee cup, and the next day you got a black one and they're writing you up.
I agree.
It's bullcrap.
I just think at the end of the day, the kids are losing out, and I know I get messages sometimes, but this is one of the reasons why Steve and I are so passionate about bringing individuals like Mike and other people on the show, is because if you don't educate yourself on these type of things that are going on, it's going to come back to bite you. And I'm really tired of hearing people complain, oh, well, the system's corrupt. If the system is corrupt, educate yourself and do something about it and shut up.
I agree.
Agreed. Folks, this was Mike Rowe. He was talking about the arbitration fraud that's in the Clark County School District. We hope that this program educated you, and please share it amongst yourself. And we just want to make sure that we have great teachers in the school district to educate our future children that's going to be mayor, governor, police officer, entrepreneur, casino owner, and make sure we educate our students, and we also need to educate ourselves. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.